Savvy Business Radio, drawing out the best from our guests with our host, Christina Nichman.
Our guest today is Sandra Joseph. She's an inspirational keynote speaker and author of the new book, Unmasking What Matters, 10 Life Lessons from 10 Years on Broadway. Her legendary run as Christine in The Phantom of the Opera spanned 10 years, more than 1,300 performances, and earned her the record as the longest-running leading lady in the longest-running Broadway show of all times. Today, Sandra is on a mission to empower other people's voices through her work as an author, speaker, and workshop facilitator. Find out more about Sandra at sandrajoseph.com. Hi, Sandra. Welcome to Savvy Business Radio. How are you this morning?
Hey, Christina. I'm great. How are you?
I'm doing fabulous. I'm so blessed that Michelle introduced us, and you're here to share your great talents. You've been on Broadway for over 10 years as Christine in The Phantom of the Opera, and you came from a past of extreme stage fright, which I can understand. I was a violinist in the School of Performing Arts, had extreme stage fright myself. But one of the things that stops us from creating our dreams often, not just stage fright, but a lot of goals we put forth we don't actually accomplish, but you did. And you're going to share with the audience how you did that. And also your new book. You'll share your new book, Unmasked.
Yes, Unmasking What Matters. Yep.
Yes. So I'm grateful to have you here today. Before we go to all that, share a little bit about your background. What brought you to the world of singing and Broadway?
Well, I loved singing and I loved musicals from the time I was very small. Mm-hmm. But I never believed that I would be able to do it myself. I was a shy, introverted kid with no desire to be the center of attention or be in the spotlight. That was my worst nightmare. Mm-hmm. But it really was the love of that art form that kept inching me forward. I sort of couldn't let it go, or it wouldn't let me go. So I continued to just take baby steps. I chickened out of the first solo I was given because my stage fright was so intense. But I knew that it was something that was just inside of me that wanted to be expressed. So I did my first show in high school and continued studying in college and eventually moved to New York, faced all sorts of rejection, as you can imagine. And finally, after almost giving up and being completely broke and really thinking it was never going to happen for me, I finally got the one big break that changed everything for me. And as you said, for so many of us, we have these dreams or goals for ourselves, and they don't always happen in the timing that we want them to. And sometimes they don't happen in the way we thought they might. I mean, truth be told, I wanted to be in Les Mis. That was the show that I was dreaming of. That was my favorite musical. And I am certainly not complaining that I got to be Christine in Phantom instead. But, there are all sorts of twists and turns along the path that people, I think, don't often hear about. I can share the brief story of my, then I made it. Which sounds like it was easy, but when you're in the trenches and it looks like it's never going to happen for me, that's a tough spot. And I was there many times.
Yeah, what I'm taking from you and what we've had from a lot of the most successful business owners that have come on the show, one guy, he'd been $25 million he makes today. He said it took him more than 25 years till he started to see really amazing progress in his business. And he said, now people look at my $25 million business and think, wow, you're overnight success. It's like overnight in 30 years? Not really. But it's what people see on the outside. They just see the explosion. They don't see all the hard work that it took to get there.
Right. Being in the trenches and facing rejection and failure and disappointment and heartbreak. And the years of that, I mean, it was years for me, hundreds of no's before I got the one big yes that changed my life. And it continues as we're evolving and growing. Yeah. I mean, so I've been out of Phantom for more than 10 years now. That was 10 years of my journey. And since then, it's been almost a mirror image of that same exact journey because I was starting over. I knew that I wanted to do something different. And I knew I had a story to share. And I thought, I'm going to write a book. Well, cut to 10 years later into that journey.
Yeah.
I mean, it was way harder than I thought it would be. It took me far longer to find my way into this second chapter of my life. But now I can truthfully say it's more rewarding than the first. But again, perseverance is a huge theme.
Yeah. And what I'm getting from you is that we have different stages of our life. We don't always do the same thing for our entire life. There's some people who are just like, this is my passion. I knew it from like 3 and I just want to do it till I die. There's some people like that. And then there's people like me and most other people who you have a passion, you do it for a while, or you even have a job that you do for a while to feed your family. And then you decide, now what? Is this what I want to leave behind? What legacy do I want to leave behind? Which is something you also talk about in your book. But then where do you go from there? You were in parts where you felt like, it's never going to happen for me. How did you stay the track?
That's a great question. I really do believe that it was this inner sense, the inner voice, the intuition, whatever you want to call it, guidance. It was just a feeling that I had that it wasn't time to give up yet. And I think we all have that inner compass that's guiding us in the right direction. You can't always see the end of the road, but you might be able to see the next little stepping stone on the path. And some voice inside of me said, keep going. And I think it comes down to what we face every day in every moment of our lives, that age-old archetypal choice between love and fear. And there was a lot of fear, a lot of, I am out of my mind. I was 26 years old, living on a friend's sofa. I had a suitcase with all of my belongings, completely broke. I'm living on about $3 a day. And my friends from high school were having children and 401ks and all of this stuff. There were definitely times when I thought, this makes no sense. But something in me, and I really believe it was love, the voice of love, just kept saying, this is my passion. This is what brings me the most joy. And I'm just going to keep trying a little bit longer. And eventually that led me to, the thing that I never could have even dreamed of.
Yeah. I love that you mentioned that, because so many people I've talked to in the past had just the same similar experience. And often along the journey to your dreams, there'll be people well-meaning that will say, hey, come on, enough of sleeping on the couch. Go out there and be like the rest of us. Get that 401k, get that job. Let's get real. Did you have that happen? Did you have family or friends try to pull you off course?
I did. And even more recently than that, when I was leaving Broadway, I definitely had people, and I still do have some people who say to me, how could you walk away from that? Aren't you going to go back? Don't you miss it? And we do really have to get clear on our own values and our own purpose, that we're not here to play a role that anybody else thinks is right for us. Again, coming back to that inner guidance. And I knew that there was something else for me to do. So staying true to that voice, I think can be challenging, especially when the voices around us are saying, are you sure about this? There will always be naysayers. And we ultimately have to listen to our own inner voice.
Yeah. For me, it was interesting. For years, I was in corporate, and it got to a point it wasn't working for me, and my health brought it to the surface. And there's times like that where sometimes you need a bump upside the head, and sometimes it'll be a crisis. Something will happen, maybe your health. And for me, it was that. And I had to take a hard look inside and realize, what happened to me though, Sandra? I didn't even know what my dreams were. I had become so disengaged from my own spirit and my own soul. I didn't even know what my dreams were. What would you tell someone who's gotten to that point where they become so disheartened by life that they don't even know where to begin?
Oh, I love this question. And this is ultimately why I wrote the book. I also had a health crisis. After the year after I left Phantom, I was diagnosed with a scary tumor on my brain stem. Turned out to be okay. But those are the things that get our attention and wake us up. And there are times when we feel like everything's on the table. I am re-examining. And I think for anyone listening or watching us, getting really clear and conscious and intentional about that choice is something that we can do at any moment without waiting for the bump upside the head. And I do think it begins with carving out a little bit of time for silence and inward listening. If we're so busy and so connected to our devices that we don't create space, then you will stay cut off from your heart, from your passion. So really taking the brave journey inward to listen to your heart. It's there. It is definitely there, just waiting for your attention. And the moment that you drop in and listen to your own inner guidance, something will come up. Might not be a full picture. Maybe can't see the entire map, but you'll see the next step on the journey. Wow. I really do believe that.
I not only believe it, I've experienced it. I'm sensing from what you've gone through that you have too. When I left corporate, and it came to a point where either you leave corporate or you end up having a heart attack. So at first, I had no idea what I was going to do. I told myself, I'm going to do what I did in corporate and take it to my own biz. It should be a piece of cake. Not really. Thought it would be, but the first day I woke up from not going to a job, I woke up and did an hour of praying and meditation. It was so awesome. After I think about 6 weeks, I went to visit my coworkers. They're like, you look like a new person. And it was really getting to spend that time with myself, which I think we forget to do, how important it's just to spend time with you. Not other people, not your devices, but just to get real with you. And I started writing in journals and doing stuff like that. It just helped me to get clear. And now you mentioned something else that was important, that you don't always get a full picture. And that's what happened to me. I had no idea what my next steps were going to be, but just starting to journal and do that got me on the path of one day hearing a podcast where I thought, what is a podcast? And hearing that person do that podcast, something inside of me screamed, you need to do that. Yes. Had I not been taking that time to be with myself, I don't think I would have heard that message.
That is so powerful. Yes, absolutely. And I'm a big journaler myself. I actually created a companion journal to the book because at the end of every chapter, I have questions for the reader that really are an invitation for you to go within and ask yourself, what is my heart guiding me toward today? And I do think that carving out that time, and it doesn't have to be a lot of time. You don't have to meditate for an hour. You don't have to journal for 20 minutes a day. But just asking yourself maybe 3 questions in the morning or before you go to bed. I like to bookend the day with a little bit of inward time for reflection. In the morning, I have a 5-minute practice that I often do of asking myself, what is my heart's desire? What is asking for my heart's attention today? And then at the end of the day, going through and saying, what were the best moments of today? What am I grateful for? What happened that was good? And even that little bit of self-inquiry begins to reveal this tapestry of this is what makes me feel alive. And we're always growing toward more of that. We never are finished. We never arrive. So that inward journey continues, and it's what helps us blossom until the day we die. We just continue to open.
I love that you say that as well, because I think myself included for years thought, I can't wait till I get to success, whatever that is. And we have this kind of vision of, a big house, a big mansion, maybe whatever it might be, kids. And we're always striving for that. And we get there and we're like, oh, I feel empty. Because
oh my gosh. Yes. Keep going.
There's so much more to that. And then you begin to realize what is success. And it's not one thing. It's ever going journey of discovering yourself and discovering how you can use your gifts and talents in the world and make it better.
Yes. That is a huge realization. And, in my own experience, I made it to the pinnacle of beyond what I ever thought was possible for me. So I had all of the external markers of success. And yet what I recognized more than anything by getting to the top was that there really is no there in a sense. And yes, I was grateful. Yes, it was amazing to play that role on Broadway. But John Kabat-Zinn's words, wherever you go, there you are. And my own sense of inadequacy and my own not enoughness came right along the ride. So what I really understood, and this really is the backbone of when you talk about unmasking what matters, what I recognized was the real journey is not about the journey upward. It's the journey inward that counts, because you can get to the top and still be unhappy and unfulfilled. And then it's even more devastating because you're looking around going, I have everything I ever dreamed of. How come I'm still not better? Inwardly, I'm not fulfilled. I'm not happy. I still feel like something's missing. I'm not enough. Yes. So it was really looking in the mirror and saying, okay, where is the journey of adequacy? How can I find my way to recognizing that who I am behind the mask of success or of my role, but who I am at a level of being is really enough. That to me is the real definition of success, when we recognize that we're enough and we move through the world from that foundation.
You can impact so much more greater that way. I've heard so many people say, including myself, way back when I was in my 20s, I said, my dream is to have this, not mansion, but this really nice condo in Manhattan, top floor penthouse, getting all the frills and thrills. But then you think to yourself, yeah, that's great, but what do people really want? It's not really the money. It's not the apartment. It's this sense of I'm really being to the greatest extent of my life. I'm actually experiencing as fully as possible. And when you can do that without looking at it good, bad, and ugly, because there's going to be great seasons where it's like summer and everything's kicking. And then there's going to be winter where things are pretty yucky, like when you got diagnosed. And to take all of it and realize that this too will end and we're going to have some great times ahead. But how do you keep on not faltering when you're in a state of winter and saying that I just can't handle it anymore?
Well, I still falter all the time when I'm in those pits. But what I've come to recognize in my own experience is that there's value in those valleys. There really is value in the dark times, when it's yucky, when it's winter, when we're brought to our knees in some way. I mean, if you think about in your own life, the times when you've really had breakthroughs, when you've learned the most, oftentimes it's from the difficult experiences that you've gone through. And that's the birthplace of resilience and wisdom. How do we stay connected to all that's larger than us when we're in a dark place? Because when we're in the darkness, it doesn't mean everything is dark.
It's just how we're perceiving it at that moment.
Exactly. And that's okay. And I think to not judge ourselves for feeling what we feel when we're in those dark times, but to question the thoughts and beliefs that we're creating because of it, the meaning we're making out of it. I think that's the trick, is to ask ourselves, what can I learn from this, as opposed to making up all sorts of meanings about I'm a failure, or I brought this on myself, or to add judgment and pain to what is already painful. That's not helpful.
No. Well, you mentioned earlier that you would write down what are some of the great things that happen. And early on when I started my business, I had a coach and she said, okay, so what successes did you have today? I'm like, successes? I had no sales, made no money. Successes? And she's like, no, let's reframe that and look at it. What did you learn from today? What was good about today that brought you one step closer to your goal, making a sale or making more in your business, whatever it might be? What is the one thing you can say that moved you closer to that? And if not, what can you do to get closer?
That's right. That's a very powerful reframe. And another thing I just want to throw in, because it's coming to mind, so maybe there's someone who will relate to this, but I think I've been a person who's been a little bit type A in my life, really driven, always moving to the next goal. And one of the things that's been most helpful for me is to sometimes let go of all of the effort and just allow room for grace, to move from a mindset of doing to really just being playful. That has been huge for me, to get out of trying to make it happen, because sometimes I think that grasping, clinging, overwork gets us in our own way. We start tripping over our own 2 feet. That certainly happened to me in my Phantom auditions. I didn't get the role the first 2 times I auditioned. And I think a huge part of that was trying so hard. So one of the things I've learned to do is sort of unclench my fists and remain more open. I think setting the intention, taking action, and then releasing, walking into that space of surrender is incredibly powerful as well.
Yeah. And it's an interesting word. When I've talked to people about it, and my friends in the past, when we've talked about this idea that I need to let go, it almost feels like I'm giving up, but it's not. The intention is not giving up, but letting it flow. Like, I'm going to go out there and do my absolute best, and whatever happens, happens. I'm not going to put an attachment to the outcome.
Oh, that's huge. It's everything. And as a performer, and you know this, you have to allow space for flow, or you will never perform at your best. If you try to control everything, you're not really present. And that's the whole gig. I mean, that's the whole point of all of this, is to be present, to be here, to be in your body, and to allow that. That's where the miracles take place. And there's a wonderful program called The Passion Test. It's a book and a program. And they talk about 3 stages of manifestation. And they are intention, attention, and no tension. And the third one, I think, is so important, not to go in with that. Like, if you have too much tension when you're playing the violin, the strings they won't be open and move. The same thing vocally. If I'm singing with tension around my throat, the sound will not flow through and be what you want it to be. So yeah,
absolutely. This brings to mind, for me, I was in my 20s taking dance. I'd gotten so enamored with flamenco. So I was taking flamenco courses or classes, and I was really sucking at it. But I really liked it, and I want to get better at it. So I convinced the teacher to teach me against all I had. He didn't want to spend his time teaching me because I was so bad. But I said, please teach me. So we're in there for weeks on end, and I cannot get the choreography no matter how hard I try. And he said, finally, he just said, close your eyes. Close your eyes. And I closed my eyes, and he said, just feel. And then he put his arms around me, kind of cupping the direction or the way he wanted my body to go, and just had me dance around the room, kind of holding the back of me, kind of fixing my body. And because I had let go and let him do it and put my body where it needed to go, I started to feel the music for the first time and started to get the choreography. And he said, remember what that feels like? Now do it. And I did it. And it kind of showed me that, all this time I was trying so hard to get the choreography. And I'm looking so stupid. Look at all these people. They got it. And I can't keep up. I look like an idiot. But when I finally just let go and felt it, just went into the music feeling wise, bam.
Oh, that is beautiful. Yeah. It's when you become the dance instead of trying to be the dancer.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's beautiful.
Yeah. Let's go back a little bit. We talked about, there's times where in the beginning of any great challenge or goal, you start to feel like you want to give up. And is there a good time when, hey, you should call it quits, and you've gotten to a point where you should start going in another direction and maybe you're on the wrong path? How do you decide that? How do you know that?
Yeah, I think that is such an individual decision, but I do think there's incredible power in letting go, in saying, okay, I gave it my best shot, and now I'm going to move on to plan B. I don't think there's anything to judge oneself about for making that choice. That's an empowering choice to make. And I support anyone if that's what their inner guidance is really telling them. But I don't think anyone can make that decision for us. We have to listen to our own inner wisdom and keep asking ourselves, what would love do? Rather than what would fear do. What is this, the voice of failure, quitting, giving up? Or is this the voice of inner wisdom and love and self-nurturance? saying, like a perfect, beautiful mother or father figure would say to you, sweetheart, I love you. I'm so proud of you. Yeah. You gave it your best shot, and that's all that matters. That means success. That is success, that you tried your best. And now, if you decide to bow out gracefully, wrap that chapter up in a bow and move on to something else, more power to you. Let's go.
Let's go. Well, interestingly, Sandra, I found in my own life, corporate and otherwise, that sometimes, as we talked about, that letting go of this particular outcome we're looking for or goal we're trying to reach, sometimes by letting go of that opens up the door to other opportunities that were right in front of us that we just could not see or take advantage of because we were holding on to this one outcome.
Oh boy, do I relate to that. Yes. Now, when I started speaking to audiences as myself, not as a part of a show, but sharing a message, that whole idea came to me really in sort of a visualization. I got this sort of download where I saw myself sharing my story to audiences and talking about fear. Now, in my perception, all I could imagine that made sense to me was to speak to high school students who wanted to pursue the arts. I thought, well, I can certainly speak to what it feels like to not believe in yourself and maybe encourage them to go for their dreams despite their fears. I was determined that was the direction I was going in. And I made a demo tape and tried to get an agent to send me out to speak to high schools. And I could not get arrested. Nobody wanted me. Even in my hometown, in my home state of Michigan, I couldn't get an agent to book me. Now, I had no idea back then there was such a thing as being a keynote speaker for businesses and corporations and this whole other world. But I started meeting people from the business world who said, oh my gosh, what you're talking about has everything to do with the journey of entrepreneurship and being successful. It's not just for, I was thinking in a much too narrow way. So once I was forced really to let go of, it's going to be high school kids who are interested in the arts, this much more lucrative and expansive journey began. Wow. So yeah, we never know what might be right around the corner once we let go of what we thought it should be.
Yeah. And it's funny for me when times like that happen, it's someone will come into my life and say, hey, there's this opportunity to do this. I'm like, okay, I'll do that. And that's kind of actually still in line of what I want to accomplish. And that's exactly what happened to you. You were talking to people about where you want to go and they're like, you should do that over here. We could totally use your skills right here. So
yeah, they see things that you may not see. I didn't see the connection. And when I was first brought into financial services companies, like, I don't know anything about being a financial advisor. And now I spend a great deal of my time doing client appreciation events with financial advisors and all these things that I didn't know were things.
Absolutely. Well, now I'm so grateful you came out to share all this, but I want people to get your book today and find out how they can really reach their goals. How can they do that?
Oh, thank you. It's easy to find me and the book at sandrajoseph.com, SandraJoseph, sandrajoseph.com. And the book is available at all booksellers on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, IndieBound, all of the major retailers.
Yeah. And if anyone out there is also listening and their company wants to hire you to come on in and speak to them, how do they do that?
Oh, thank you. You can send an email to sandrajosephproductions@gmail.com.
Awesome. Well, this has been an enlightening talk this evening, Sandra. Thank you so much for coming to share your great wisdom today on Savvy Business Radio.
Thank you so much for having me, Christina.
You betcha.
Savvy Business Radio broadcasts worldwide via a large podcast network, celebrating business owners, entrepreneurs, influencers, and successful individuals. Find out about our paid sponsorship opportunities or how to become a guest. Call 732-474-7375 or email Christina@savvybusinessradio.com.